I've been getting a lot of questions around gear, and even though at the end of my videos I try to list the gear that I think is significant in that video so people know what I'm using, I still seem to be getting questions. So what I thought I would do for this last Quarantine Chronicle series especially, I thought I would just touch on the gear that I used during the filming and the fishing and hiking in that chronicle. But for the for the gear that I use in general, I think what I'm going to do is, maybe every 6 months just do a gear video on, what I've been using for that past 6 months. I know for myself, I'm kind of a gear nut, a gear addict, whatever you want to call it. And, my favorite backpacker magazines, my favorite outdoor magazines were always the gear guides. So I figured, every 6 months I'll just sort of do a gear guide and talk about the gear that I'm using. And I hope folks find this helpful. Top left, we have the HydraPak 2-liter 70-ounce bladder. I've got a JW Outfitters fly box carrier with a CNF design fly patch. Osprey Exos 38 pack for day hiking. Marmot rain jacket. FOBOS MKB7 modern K-Bar 7 as my carry knife. Outdoor Vitals LoftTek jacket as my outer shell. Polarized sunglasses. Petzel Nao as my headlamp. The Spot. SOL Escape Lite Bivy. A Pro Bar for a snack. I carried 2 fly reels. One is the Martin Classic MC45 with a 5-weight Cortland camo tip intermediate sink line. The Hardy flyweight with a Scientific Anglers 4-weight GPX line. A small strand of Survivor cord, not enough to build a shelter, but enough to build a fire. What I believe is Loon dry fly floatant, MSR microfilter, generic trowel, toilet paper, and a lighter. REI Hiker First Aid, a pair of Kenai Polypro gloves with removable polyester liners, a Kuhl hat, and the Nike Terra Kiger 3 trail shoes. Now I'll talk through each one of these individually. So let's quickly talk through each of these. I've got the Osprey Exos 38, which is a great ultra lightweight backpack. I carry it for day packing because it's got a belt. I've got back issues, so this helps me support more of the weight on my back. I've carried Osprey for, since 2001. I originally had an Osprey Ether 60, which I still have. And like 4 years ago, I think it was, I picked up an Exos 38 for day packing. I've got a 58 for my longer trips. It does everything that I need. It's got a rear pocket to carry things. It's got 2 side pockets. The side pockets are handy in that you can put things in from the top, or you can put things in from the side here, which is handy when you've actually got the pack on. Mesh so that it's breathable. You're not getting all sweaty. It's got a removable top flap. Top flap has a zipper here at the top. It also has a compartment underneath where you can put stuff, and this is where I usually put safety information about myself, or maps, that sort of thing. They've got a nifty system to put your trekking poles on, or to put an ice axe on, and so that's what some of these loops are for. So you've got loops here. You've got a loop here where you can rig up a hands-free when you've got trekking poles. So FOBOS MKB7. I've got a full video on this, so check that out. It's a bomber knife. It's the kind of knife that you bring with you when you know you're going to be in a rough situation and you need something that's absolutely reliable, absolutely dependable. The cool thing about this, these sheaths are cool in that they've got snaps as part of the strap mechanism, which I like because typically the pants I have integral belts. And if you have an integral belt, then there's no way to take the belt off. You need to be able to slip something into the belt. So this works great. I've got my ferro rod on it, and it creates great sparks, as you'll see in the video. The one thing I don't have on this sheath, which I typically do have, is survivor cord. So I need to add survivor cord to this sheath so that if I get into a situation like I did during the Mammoth edition of the Quarantine Chronicles, I can string up a quick shelter for myself, which I couldn't do. Outdoor Vitals. So this is the second version of the LoftTek jacket. So those of you that have been with the channel for a while will remember that last year I had the original version, and it just didn't cut it. It didn't cut it as an outdoor jacket. It didn't deliver on its claims, and so I tried it a couple times, and it just wasn't what it was supposed to be. The final straw was I went up on my roof, and it's supposed to be water repellent. It's not. They don't say that's waterproof, but during the Kickstarter campaign, they made the point that it was water repellent. They would dunk it in water and they would bring it up and show that that it hasn't soaked in, yada yada yada. During last year, I went up on my roof to fix something, and I got caught in the rain, and within a matter of, I don't know, 5 minutes maybe, I was completely soaked. The pit zips here, around the pit zips underneath, I was just completely drenched. My back was completely drenched, and that was sort of the last straw. So I sent Outdoor Vitals a note, and I said, hey, you know what? I know other people have complained about these jackets. I gave it a try. I took it out today, and I'm completely soaked within 5 minutes of rain. And I told them how it only seemed to work in one temperature range. It didn't really keep me warm. It didn't really work. They had me send them pictures, and then they sent me this new jacket. And this new jacket is very much different than the old jacket. The old jacket was very spotty in the placement of the LoftTek. This is more consistent. The old jacket, the nylon material was a lot thinner, and so this is thicker. The ironic thing is, in the old jacket, the fit was actually better. This does not fit very well. I mean, they say it's an athletic fit. It is not an athletic fit. It is designed, it seems like it's designed for guys that are sort of bigger in the chest and in the stomach and have very thin arms, right? So it's not athletic in any way. If you get a small and you're a skinny rock climber type, it'll fit. It'll be big, but it'll fit. If you're one of those guys that just does not work out and is big in the torso, big in the stomach, right? You're just like one big board. You're fat all around with skinny little arms, so this will fit. But if you're actually an athlete and you've got broad shoulders, a thin waist, big arms, it's not the greatest fit in the world. So this is not the greatest fit, but the original jacket, I had a medium, and I had them send me a medium, and I couldn't even get my arms into the jacket. So I had them send me a large. So this one actually fits my arms. It's too big, of course, in the waist because I don't have twiggy little arms. So anyway, Marmot. I don't remember the name of this Marmot rain jacket. I got this a couple years ago, and when I say a couple years ago, it could be 3, it could be 5 years ago. Where I grew up, you used words like a couple and a few and several to not really mean a specific number. I know for most people, a couple means 2, a few means 3, several means 4. But when I grew up, a couple just meant it was just a turn of phrase. So When I say a couple, it could be, it could be, it could be 2 years ago, it could be 5 years ago. I don't remember when I got it. It's breathable, waterproof. At the time, I remember it being sort of cutting edge technology. I don't know what it's at now. Nike Terra Kiger 3s. So these are several years old. The Terra Kiger 3s are Nike's 4mm drop running shoes. I have several pair, and these are the shoes that I run trails with. They're the shoes that I day hike with, and they're the shoes that I backpack with, given the right conditions. Again, they're 4mm drop, which means that the distance between the heel and the toe is 4 millimeters. They don't have a rock plate or anything like that. They're fairly porous. You can see the tread, and they're just good overall shoes. I really enjoy them, so much so that I've got like half a dozen pair. And this is probably one of the last two that are in this kind of condition. They do have a tendency, if you have wide feet, these are actually good for people with wide feet, but they do have a tendency to split out on the side after a lot of use. The great thing though is the way that this system is designed. You've got basically these straps, and these straps, you can see them here. They go from the eyelet, from the lace eyelet, they go all the way down to the sole of the foot. So even though the outer has burst along the sides, these are still in place. So I've got pairs that the outer burst like 3 years ago that I'm still running in because this thing still locks my foot in place. So they're pretty bomber. Cool hat with my Dark Timber Brotherhood patch. I don't remember the name of this particular model of cool hat. It's a decent hat. The only issue I have with it is this locking mechanism in the back. Pops up every once in a while, which is sort of a drag. MSR water filter. I've had this water filter for a while. It's light, and it's tiny, it's portable, and it works well. Of course, toilet paper and a lighter. Now I'm sort of old school. I grew up in the 70s, started backpacking and camping in the late 70s, early 80s, where you dug yourself a hole, you burned the toilet paper, you covered the hole back up. These days I do a combination of both. Depends on my mood. So I will burn my toilet paper if it's allowed in the area that I'm in. But I also pack out my toilet paper. So one of the things that I do, especially when I'm backpacking, is I'll carry extra sandwich bags, and I'll carry an extra sandwich bag specifically to pack out my toilet paper. Not a big deal to me either way. This trowel, just sort of a generic trowel. It looks like it's made by a company called GSI Outdoors. You probably can't get it anymore because it's probably 15 or 20 years old. It's seen quite a bit of use. These days you can get titanium trowels or whatever else you want to get. REI Hiker First Aid. I think I'll do a separate video on the first aid and how I've reconfigured the first aid and what I carry based on the wilderness first aid courses that I've taken. So I'll cover the insides of this at a later date, but right now I'm carrying the Hiker First Aid with a few substitutions, and that's for day hike. So I've got two different versions of this first aid pack, and they're constant in my packs. So I've got the hiker version in my day pack, and then I've got a bigger multi-use backpacking version in my multi-day pack, so in my 58. I didn't have to use these last week, but I did have them with me. Kenai Polypro gloves. They are a bit worn, so much so that when they're wet they don't they don't insulate as well as they should, as well as they used to. So I've got these pair of Polypro liners, and so I will wear those when it gets too cold. Fly fishing is one of those sports where you really don't need to have expensive equipment. Expensive equipment is nice in some instances, especially for like distance casting and stuff. It's very handy, and it does make a difference. But if you're just doing general fishing where you're not casting more than like 30 feet, inexpensive equipment works just as well. I know some people are going to probably get on and dispute that, but it's the fly fisher that makes the fishing. It's not the equipment. That said, and especially when it comes to fly line, a lot of people have said that your fly reel is just something to hold your line, and there's something to that. I mean, it's not exactly, I wouldn't say it's 100% true, because drag is an important thing, and having a smooth drag is an important thing, especially when you're fighting big fish, right? If you have a drag that catches, or you have a reel that catches and creates a knot in your line, or just stops your line suddenly, you're going to break big fish off. For the majority of situations, the reel is not a super critical piece of kit. And so when I started fly fishing, and this was back in the early 90s, I went to Kmart, and my first fly outfit was a Martin rod and reel combination from Kmart, and it came with a cheaper Martin outfit than this. But what I quickly learned was that I liked the Martin reels, and so I picked up. I've got probably 8 or 10 of these Martin Classic fly reels. I've got a bunch of MC45s, which is a 4 or 5 weight reel, and then I've got a bunch of the 5.6s, which is a 5 or 6 weight reel. I don't fish them anymore. I've learned to appreciate better fly reels, but for lines that I don't typically fish that often, instead of going and buying a new fly reel and a new $150 fly reel to carry a line that I don't fish that often, I'll still spool up one of these old Martins, and they'll be perfectly fine, right? I mean, if you're going to fight a fish off a reel, then a premium reel makes a difference. But if you're not going to fight the fish off the reel, then it's just a line holder. So I've got on this, I've got the Cortland Camo Tip 7, which is a 5 weight intermediate fly line. And you can hear, it's an old reel, not the smoothest drag, as you can hear it kind of catching. But, for what I'm going to use it for, I think it's going to be it's going to work just fine. I've also got a much better fly reel, which is the Hardy Featherweight. Hardy Featherweight is a classic fly reel. It's very simple, but it is a classic, and it works really well. And on this, as I said earlier, I've got a Scientific Anglers GPX line. This is a 4 weight line, which technically I think is like a 4.5 weight. My headlamp is the Petzel Nao. This is a great headlamp. It is a rechargeable battery. So you pop this out, plug it into a USB port or an iPhone charger, and it charges right up. On the back, it's got an indicator light to tell you when you've turned it on, how much of a charge you have. So three lights means a full charge. It has several different settings. It's programmable, but I use it in the basic settings. It has what they call reactive light technology. So basically what that means is that it will vary the intensity of the beam based on what you happen to be looking at. So if I'm looking at something and it's close to me, it'll lower the intensity of the beam. And if I'm looking off in the distance, it'll raise the intensity of the beam. I can also set it so that it's a consistent lumen strength if I want to. But the reactive technology is nice because when you look at something, it's not actually blinding you when you're looking at something up close. And again, I think I've had this for 5 years. Survivor cord. As I've said in previous videos, survivor cord is great. It is, typically I will carry it in a 6 foot length. But when it's not on my sheath, I always have a little bit in my pack so that I can start fires, and if I need a little emergency cordage. This is only about 18 inches long, maybe longer, maybe about 20 inches. It's got snare wire in it, so if you need to make a snare. It's got several strands of paracord within it, so from this I could make a longer strand of paracord if I needed to. The thing that I find most helpful is the jute twine. So with this takes a fire, or takes a spark immediately. It's waterproof, so even when it's wet, all you need to do is wring it out and then fluff it up, and it'll take a spark immediately. So it's great, and this is why I have such a short length, because I have it in my pack at this length specifically for building a fire, not for building shelters, and not for real cordage. Pro bars, I tend to eat pro bars on the trail sometimes, especially now that a lot of my favorite trail foods are no longer being made. This is one that I've been able to use consistently over the years. One bar is typically over 300 calories. This particular one is 390, so it's a fairly good calorie to weight ratio, which is what I look for. I look for a good calorie to weight ratio. I always carry the spot. I use the basic functionality, so just the I'm okay, I'm not okay, I need help features. This is the Gen 3. I used to have a Gen 1. I recently upgraded just to carry something that's a little bit lighter. Nothing really to talk about here. I've got some prescription polarized lenses. I've talked about polarized lenses before. They are by far the most important piece of kit. The way that I fish especially, you need to be able to see fish. And these are from IC Berlin. They're to my prescription, and I'd be lost without them. Fly floatant. This is by Loon, I believe. It's a desiccant fly floatant, which means that all I do is pop off the top. I put the fly in, shake it around. It dries the fly out. I blow off the extra desiccant, and I fish it. Typically what I'll do is before I put the fly in the desiccant, I'll squeeze the fly out, I'll blow on it, try to get dried out as much as I can, stick it in there, give it a couple shakes, and it's good to go. SOL Escape Light Bivy. Talked about this quite a bit this week. This is what I draped over myself when we were in the hailstorm. I thought I had used their emergency blanket when I was in the Immigrant last year and I needed a ground cloth in the snow, but I didn't. I actually used this. So it was wide enough for the footprint of my tent, and it insulated well. I used it as a ground cloth between my tent floor and the snow. I had my normal sleeping pad, and I was perfectly toasty warm. So yeah, I really like this. I would like to go out one night and just try sleeping in this and see how it is. HydraPak, 2 liter, 70 ounce bladder. This is something that's relatively new to me within the last year and a half. I used to carry a 100 ounce bladder, but I've moved to the 70 ounce because of, I moved to this specifically because it was lighter than what I previously had. And what I'm finding is I really only need 70 ounces for about 6 hours. In the summer, maybe I need it for 4 hours, but the point is, I don't need to carry 100 ounces of water. As I get older, I stop more than I used to. So this has worked out fairly well for me. Lastly, my JW, I don't even know what they call this. This is the JW Outfitter bag, and again, I don't even know what to call this. I picked it up very early in my fly fishing career, and it's something that, frankly, I don't see them making anymore. It's a very simple design. You open it up, and using Velcro, you attach your fly box. I'm using a C&F Design fly box, one of the C&F Design fly boxes with multiple leaves. And so you can see I need to fill this in a little bit. But what I've got here on the first leaf, basically all my ant and terrestrial patterns. And then I've got another leaf for all my dry fly patterns. And you can see I don't carry very many patterns. I've got different sizes of the same pattern, but I don't vary much. I do carry a bunch of different ants, but what I find is this ant here, this winged ant, is the one that always performs. I've got different sizes of stimulators. I've got some green drakes, because green drakes in the spring in California are always a nice thing to have. I've got some elk hair caddis. I've got my own caddis pattern, which I need to tie more of. Down here, I've got some emerger patterns, and then here I've got some parachute atoms. And that's really, it in terms of dry flies that I carry. It's either going to be an ant or a terrestrial, or it's going to be one of these. Over here, I've got some lake patterns. So these are all lake patterns. I guess you could call them streamers. Down here, this bottom row is going to be all Denny Rickards stillwater nymphs. And then the next couple rows are going to be stillwater nymphs and his Callibatus nymph. And then this middle row is going to be October caddis patterns. So we've got case caddis here along the right side, and then we've got the emerging October caddis patterns over here. Now, you're like, well, Jim, you fish lakes a lot. Why do you carry October caddis? Well, a couple of reasons. One, I used to go up to the upper Sac every year during the October caddis hatch, and so I would carry these patterns, and I just haven't removed them from my box. Two, in the high country, one of the things that you'll run into is you will run into large cased caddis. So those are good patterns to have. I've got some other Denny Rickards flies here. I don't remember the names of all of them. I've got some seal buggers over here, and then some of his other patterns I don't remember the name of. And again, I've got some more stillwater nymphs, and then some other just sort of mishmash of Rickards patterns and some other patterns. I've got a pattern that I'd call Black Magic that I tie. I've got a couple other patterns there that just don't have names. And then over here, typically, and I've got to get more, typically this leaf is filled with size 18 or 20 gold ribs hare's ears. The middle portion typically will have some pheasant tail nymphs. Down here, I'll have the soft hackle gold ribs hare's ear that I carry so much, and typically it will be in a typical hare's ear coloration, but every once in a while I'll tie it with like a black seal fur. So that's what's in the box, and then I can carry different things. So I've got some beads here loose, because who needs shot when you have bead? All you do is you slip the bead on the leader, you tie your fly on. Every cast you make, every drift you make, that bead's going to drop down over the knot, and all of a sudden you've turned your whatever fly it is you're using into a beadhead fly. It actually works pretty well. So I've got some leaders here. I've got, and I don't know why I still carry these, but I've got some sinking and intermediate sink leaders, which I don't ever actually use. Down here at the bottom, it's got a few places where I can hook up either hemostats or nippers, or you can see here I've got nippers, and then I've got a safety pin, and the safety pin is for helping me get knots out. Folds over. On the front, I've got a C&F Design fly patch, and you can see that it carries quite a bit. This has got pockets in it, so in my pocket I've got my license. I've got a spool of tippet in the front. I've got 2 spools of tippet in the back. Right now I'm carrying 5X, 4X, and 3X. And I always carry it around my neck. And that's basically it for the gear video. I will work on making it a little bit more polished, and what I will work towards doing is every 6 months or at least once a year, I'll go through the gear that I've used in that year, so that you know, there's always a record for folks to reference if they have questions. And again, you know, I do typically, if it's something different than what I normally use, or it's something I'd like to highlight, it's always at the end of the video. So if you watch to the end of the video, after the thank you for watching a high country fly fisher adventure, it'll scroll through the fishing rod that I've used, the backpack or the knife, typically the stuff that I change out. So I'll typically at least have the fishing rod, which I didn't present here, but the fishing rods that I carry typically are the ones that I've made, so they're cane rods to my specifications. And the knives are the thing that I probably change out the most. And so if you're ever interested in understanding what knife I happen to be carrying in any trip, it'll be there as well. I do have a couple of videos out there already on gear. So there's the 2018 backpacking trip in the Immigrant. I did a gear video specifically for what I was carrying and how I was carrying it. So I'll link to that. There's also a video out there that I took on a day trip in 2018, I think it was as well. And it just went through the gear that I was carrying that particular day. So if you look at the playlist, there is I think there's a knives and gear playlist that you can thumb through to see what other gear I might be carrying. So that's it for the Mammoth Edition gear guide. I hope you enjoyed it. I will try to bring more gear guides later in the year. Thanks.